Good morning. Welcome to Monday Morning. I am Tanny Reed Walker. I am a counselor with FCSS in the Barons Eureka Warner area. I am here. So I've been having struggles with the new Facebook Live, and I just saw here that I am able to post some comments. So if you aren't able to comment, you will need to be a follower of probably the MD of Tabor FCSS page, so if you're watching this. And it's going to be restricted, so you have to have at least a 2-week-old account. So if you're on and watching, I'd really appreciate it if you would drop me a line and see if this is working. If it's not working, again, I apologize. This will be an ongoing thing, I think. We've been talking about the 12 dimensions of children's grief. I got to study with Dr. Alan Wolfelt. He's the founder of the Center for Transition and Loss in Colorado. Here is one of his books. He is a very prolific writer about grief. This is Companioning the Grieving Child. It is chock full of awesomeness, and I highly recommend any of his work on grief. It takes it from being a problem to being normal, to being an experience that we all go through. His perspective is that if you're old enough to love, you're old enough to grieve. And so love and grief go hand in hand. And learning that early in my career as a counselor and a social worker was really empowering for me, because grief is scary. It holds a lot of painful emotions, and it requires a lot of change and work on oneself, and it's very intimidating as someone entering into the helping profession, or even having been in the helping profession for a long time. But I understand love, and so understanding that it's part of loving someone, and loving someone is so powerful. Giving and receiving love is the most wonderful thing, and it comes with grief. So it made it way easier for me to work with people that are experiencing grief, understand the grief in myself from losses. So we're working on the 12 dimensions of childhood grief. Today we're going to do 7, 8, 9. The last few videos on the first 6, so that would be shock or apparent lack of feelings, physiological changes, regression, disorganization and panic, explosive emotions, and acting out are prior videos that I have done. Today we're going to be doing number 7, which is hypermaturity, number 8, which is fear, and number 9, which is guilt. So these are all very big things that children can experience. You'll also notice as I go through these that adults experience these things as well. But this specific part of the series is helping children with these things. So again, if you can drop a line and let me know you're here. I see that maybe there's 2 people watching right now. Only if you're comfortable, of course, you can drop a line. I'm not seeing any, so it's a little frustrating. Maybe somebody will text me and let me know. What have I got here? Nope. Okay. So, so far, no text messages, but I'm a little distracted today. It's the last day of August. September is tomorrow, and it's big in our world in southern Alberta, and maybe I should mention that children are going back to school. There's a lot of fear right now that is happening, like it's just happening regardless of death. But if a child has had a death happen in the last little while, their fear could be highly compounded. So I think we'll probably end up talking a little bit about that today. Let's start with hypermaturity. So hypermaturity is when a child attempts to grow up too quickly after a loss. So if it's a parent that died, they might become the man or woman of the house. They just start doing things that are beyond their ages. So they might start, like if their caregiver was the one that cooked, they might try to start cooking. They might start cleaning the house. They might start to use the same language and same phrasing and stuff that the person that they've lost used to use. This happens subconsciously. I don't think they sit down and plan it, but it's a way, it can be a symbolic way of keeping that loved one here, keep them alive. It can protect, like doing those things can protect from helplessness and hopelessness. So there's a lot of powerlessness children experience on a daily basis, and they rely on their caregivers, and especially if a caregiver has passed away, that's very scary, and they feel like they might need to take some control by stepping into that role. And also, it's a subconscious way of softening blow for other people in the family and other people that love that person that passed away. Maybe they can kind of fill in their spot. And often, this behavior is encouraged. So say, oh, so-and-so is gone. You're now the head of the household, and you need to support your mom, or you need to support your dad, or you are living with your grandparents now. You need to take care of them because they're old. So a lot of times adults, they're well-meaning, and they just try to help that child with that hypermaturity. And so it's damaging because children go through developmental stages, and they learn and they experience life, and when they try to jump stages, they're not learning in a healthy manner, and they're denying their own grief. Adults that do this, support the hypermaturity, are understandably uncomfortable with children's grief or anyone's grief, and they don't understand. And so when a child starts presenting in a hypermature manner, then it's easier and more comfortable for them to connect with that child. And that is that's unfortunate, and I hope that these kind of videos and talking about that can help support people in realizing that children need to experience their grief and gently move them away from that hypermaturity. Children that end up having single parent families are often naturally more mature anyway, and they quickly will step in to the role of taking care of people because of sometimes there's some economic and social realities that are involved with single parent families. Please don't feel shame about this. Please understand that it's normal to want to have a child feel good, and this hypermaturity can make it look like they do feel good. And also, when a child has lost somebody that they love, the people around them and the adults around them have also lost someone that they love. And so sometimes this hypermaturity can feel good because some of the weight is taken off your shoulder. Oh, good, I don't have to worry about that one. Oh, they've been so much help. And so it's a really tricky line to walk, where you need to be taken care of. You also need to be doing the taking care of. So some of the ways that you can help with that part is making sure that children retain their same age friendships and relationships. And I've spoken in prior videos about how difficult that can be, but it's vitally important to help foster those relationships The child feels very different. They're changing everything. They're trying to support the family in their own emotional ways, and supporting their same age relationships is one way to help battle that a little bit. So, what else? Help compassionately. So, just be compassionate and slow down. Take lots of breaths with them. Remind them that they're a kid. Take some time to play. Those are really, really important things. So just be aware of the potential negative impact that just comments can have. Those comments of, you're the man of the house. Just put this behind you. You're going to move on. Oh, don't worry. You're still going to have a beautiful and wonderful life. That's just ignoring them and saying, oh, put this behind you so that you can make me feel better, because then I don't have to deal with your pain. Again, it's so hard to not feel some shame when we're naturally doing things that we've learned and that we've heard about, and we see it in movies, and it's just part of our culture. It's a heavy load. So try to be compassionate. And if you find that you are relying on your child's hypermaturity because of a loss that you've had, get some support. Get some support for you. Take care of yourself, and then that will help you have more capacity to take care of your child. Enlist other people to have a relationship, other people that you trust, and that will give that child lots of space and time and understanding. Someone who's willing to move slowly with them through what's happening, because that desire to have some sort of control and to be helpful and just have some power can be really strong with these little ones that are being hyper mature. I know even as a counselor, I've had, before I learned about this, I've had teenagers, especially like young teenagers, who come in, and I was absolutely amazed about how mature they were. And really they weren't, because as I got to know them, some of the other things started happening, the other dimensions of childhood grief, and it's very confusing, because you have this hyper mature child and all of a sudden they're engaging high risk behavior, which we will talk about more in a little bit here. So dimension 8 is fear. Grieving children are often afraid. They are afraid of so much. They didn't know that people could die and leave them. They've never had this experience before. And so then they'll be wondering, who else can die? Could I die? Who's going to take care of me? These are all very, very important questions, and they all are the basis, and they're all underlying that fear. Fear can often increase if a parent is struggling. If the parent is appearing detached and is unable to be supportive, then fear is going to be increasing. Also, there's a fear of loving again. Oh, grief is painful. And love, when you love someone, you really do start to realize that there is a high chance that there could be grief down the road. And that's very scary. So it's really valuable to help children realize that giving and receiving love is truly the greatest gift. And the pain is hard, but we still need to give and then receive that love. Being isolated and alone is also very painful. Giving and receiving love can carry on even after a loved one has passed away. We've talked before about traditions and kind of transmuting that relationship from being on this physical, grounded earth level to a more spiritual, different type of a level. If you ever want to have conversations about that, you feel free to contact me. You can probably find lots of groups and stuff online to support that. fear is big. It is so big. And children start to fear that they might die. So I've spoken before how there's physiological changes that can happen, and children can start to manifest illnesses and pains that might resemble the illnesses or pains that their loved one had. And those are scary. So if you are a little bit short of breath for some reason, that would just be fine and we wouldn't even think about it. We'd just breathe and keep going about our day. But if someone just passed away from lung cancer and all of a sudden they're like, I can't breathe very good, that's going to start a stress response, and it's going to increase it, and it's going to cause some panic and fear. So it's giving children tools to manage those kind of anxious, afraid feelings. So more ways to help. Be sensitive to the fears. Any questions they have about whether you're going to die or somebody else is going to die or what's going to happen or this or this or this or this or this or this or that, the child is asking for some reassurance. They're asking for you to accept them and accept their fear and love them. Accept the questions helps accept them. They are hyper aware of rejection. They are looking for any reason to back off or change their direction or what they're doing. They need to know that they can get an honest, open response from you. Make sure your answers always reflect warmth and acceptance and understanding. And remind them giving and receiving love is so valuable. It's so important. And yes, it's scary. And I understand. That's that fear. Everyone feels it. And try to just be sensitive to the fears. Don't get mad. At least try not to. And if you're struggling with that because you have your own fears, please get support yourself. Having support yourself is so important. So important. Though I always say the harder life is around you, the more support and self-care you need to work through all of that. And I've lived it, and I've seen other people live it, and it's really vital. Really vital. There's a question that we ask in counseling a lot, and it's one of the question is, oh boy, what is the question? Oh yes, it's something to do with I can handle whatever comes my way. And a lot of people think that that means that they can handle it all by themselves. And I like to remind people, no, we have other people, we have tools. Not handling things that come your way means that you do nothing and you just kind of hide under a rock and try to ignore it. Handling it means that you reach out for help, you get support, you use a tool. It's like if I have a big rock in the backyard and I need it moved. It's too heavy for me to move, so I could not handle it and just leave it and try to build around it or work around it. Or I could rent a skid loader and I could move it out. Or maybe I can invite a couple of my grown adult sons to come over and help me lift it. And daughters too. I don't think they'd enjoy it as much, but that's just my family. So there's different ways of handling things. It doesn't need to be by yourself. So I will talk about that for the rest of my life. That is really important for caregivers to have support. Okay, back to it. Another thing you can do is you can start to kind of dig out the fears. So a lot of times people aren't aware of their fears, and children are not really well versed in articulating their fears and their feelings. So you can do the wishes and fears inventory. So you can be like, let's talk about 3 wishes that we have. And then you can find out what their wishes are. And then you can talk about 3 fears that we have. So I had one, and it's like, if you could time travel anywhere, where would you go? And I had a little one go, I would go back to when my mom was alive. And it's like, bam, there's something right there. It opens it right up. So really spend some time just kind of exploring, kind of go fishing for it. You can say something like, well, I've heard that when someone in other kids' lives have died, it's kind of scary. So is there anything scary going on for you right now? And just be compassionately curious. That is one of my favorite things about talking to people, is just be compassionately curious. What is this experience like for you? What are you afraid of? What do you wish? And the wishes and the fears may seem irrational and there's no way to solve them. You don't need to solve them. All you need to do is listen to them and be curious about them and be open and warm. We do not need to solve children's grief. We do not need to solve anyone's grief. Witnessing and being there and helping people explore, and kind of like Dr. Alan Wellfelt talks about it, like walking through the forest with them and seeing the forest through their eyes. I think that's a really beautiful analogy. Okay, so the final dimension today, dimension 9, is guilt. And yes, again, there is no comment, so I will respond to any comments afterwards. Thank you for those of you that are responding. Okay, so it is incredibly human to blame ourselves. It doesn't matter what our ages are. Children especially have a really difficult time understanding cause and effect relationships. Their brains are just not developed to that space yet. That actually takes a really long time to fully develop in human beings. That's another conversation, but children, young children, they have a lot of magical thinking. They think, oh, I thought these really bad thoughts about that person that I care about, and they died. So then they think that that's a thing. I knew somebody once who, on the news, there was a very famous person who wasn't famous for really awesome things, but they were like super all over the news all the time. And I knew a young one that said, "Oh, I just wish that person was dead." Like, they were just expressing that they were tired of that's all they heard about on the news and the social media and all those things. Well, the next day, it was announced that that person had died. That person was living a very unhealthy lifestyle, and that person was obviously struggling with a great deal of things. But the young one that expressed that they wished this person had died was young. So they immediately thought that it was their fault this person had died. So I know for a fact that this young one was very careful with what they said for a very long time, because it's seems very powerful to be able to say, I wish that person was dead. So, yeah, little ones have magical thinking. I know lots of adults have magical thinking too. And it's okay to have some magical thinking. But when you think that you're the one that caused someone to die, that's extremely painful. Extremely painful. So children can think, I did bad things, or I had bad thoughts. And you can often hear them when they're talking after the person has died, when they say, if only I had done XYZ. I wish I had done XYZ. Why didn't I do XYZ? I am a bad person because I did this and this and this. And when you're hearing those kind of statements, that's a really good time to just gently find out what's going on. When it comes to guilt, you can't like tell somebody, oh, well, you shouldn't feel guilty. It's a little bit of a dance. These children can seek out self-punishment. So they're not doing it on purpose, but they might be more accident prone. They might have more high-risk behavior. That's something that I was referring to with the hypermaturity. So I'll have lots of young teenagers that are being very, very hypermature, and then all of a sudden they're high-risk behaviors. They're having accidents all the time. They start to neglect themselves. So their hygiene isn't very good. They just don't take care of themselves. And it's a form of self-punishment. And again, it's not a conscious thing. It's just happening, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. They also, guilt is a way for human beings to have some sort of control. It's kind of like a bargaining chip. It's like, okay, if I am super good, this is all going to go away and this person's going to come back. Or if I'm super good, then nobody else is going to die. And so it can become very, very damaging for a person, because then they just can't even feel like they can make mistakes. So what are some types of guilt? Well, there's survival guilt. It should have been me. I wish that I had died instead of Mommy, so that everybody else would have her. The children don't realize that if they had died, their parent would also be experiencing the same grief that they are. Survivor guilt is very, very painful, and it is something that we can be aware of. There's relief guilt. So if someone has been ill and taken up a lot of space and time in that child's life, and instead of going to birthday parties, they're going to the hospital to be able to visit somebody who's ill, like there's lots of things that can kind of cramp a child's lifestyle, right? Or if there's been a lot of conflict in that relationship, so let's say they have a sibling that they fought with all the time, and then the sibling passed away. This relief that conflict is gone is also compounding the guilt, because they feel guilty that they're relieved that they don't have to go to the hospital anymore, or they feel guilty that they're relieved that they don't have to deal with this person that they have all this conflict with. So it creates a little bit more complications, something to get some support with. Some personality factors in grief. So some children in some families, unfortunately, are blamed for a lot of things. I find this often with children who might have like developmental delays, or like some learning delays, or like just hyperactive activity or things like that, and things get broken around them. Stuff happens, and it seems like they're always in trouble and they're always at fault. And so then the guilt is compounded when someone passes away, and they have the what if this, if only I was good. And it just makes it a little bit more difficult for them to get through that guilt feeling, because they're always the blame anyway. If you know a child like that, or a family like that, again, just gently, without shame, try to get them to get some support, so the child can work through that, because it can really cling to them for their whole lives. Guilt and punishment. So we've talked a little bit about this. Kids done something wrong, or they thought something wrong. They feel like they subconsciously feel like they need to be punished, so they get punished. So obviously they're a bad person. Nobody likes them, so they get punished some more, and it just becomes this never-ending cycle. They can become more accident, and again, like I said, high level of risk-taking. There's a lot of things that they can subconsciously do to be noticed in a negative way, and it just continually reinforces the fact that they're the problem and they're the one that made that person die. And then there's some joy-guilt syndrome. So this happens when a young one starts to feel some joy again, and the guilt comes in. They're like, oh, this is a betrayal of the person I love. The person I love is not here feeling joy, so I shouldn't be feeling joy. They obviously, maybe I don't love them as much as I used to love them. And so there's that loyalty piece. And so if you're hearing that from a child, you can remind them, your grandma loved watching you play. She always told me that your laugh when you were happy was one of the most wonderful things she's ever heard in her whole life. You can really work at helping the child realize that joy is part of all of us. All of us. And we can feel deep, deep grief and loss and mourn and still have experiences of joy because we're human beings. A really great movie. Oh, I haven't talked about this yet, I don't think, is whoa, is my brain just not working today? It's the one with all the little Disney creatures. Fear, love, joy. Ugh, I miss having somebody moderate with me. I'll try to put it in the comments, the movie. I'm sure you all know. Inside Out. There it is. Oh, I love brains. Aren't they cool? We're just like, ah. Okay. How to help with guilt. Whew, that's a big one. Provide opportunities for the child to talk and play out the circumstances surrounding the death. Lots of parents are really freaked out by kids playing death. And that's how they learn. That's how they assimilate. That's how they work through it. So playing death and surrounding the circumstances surrounding death is really important. And if you can't handle talking about that, I totally understand. You can find people that will support that and give them that space. Try to prevent children from being around adults that reinforce that death is a punishment. This can happen lots of times in cases like drug overdose, murders, suicide, the really hard and complicated deaths. There's a lot of adults that unfortunately will be like, oh, they died this way? Who did they hang around with? Who did they do this? So it's super painful, and I know those people are trying to protect their own hearts and trying to rationalize why these really complicated, painful deaths happen so that they feel safe. Like, I understand that, but children don't understand that, and lots of other adults don't understand that. So if you have adults like that in your world, try to not be around them for a while. I know it can be difficult because sometimes those people are very close to us, but these little ones, they don't have the same capacity that we do to understand that these adults are coming from their own place of hurt and fear. Have an open, honest, a lot of open, honest discussions about good memories and bad memories. I have had people die that have had good memories and bad memories associated with them, and I know how hard it can be to just hear them and to support them in listening to those good and bad memories. All of them are important. They create an entire relationship. No relationship is 100% perfect. And if the relationship was especially conflictual or painful to be in, it's just really good to support talking about that as the young one is trying to reconcile that death and how it fits into their world. Reinforce a lot that being angry or upset with people does not cause them to die. We are human. We get angry. We get upset. And feelings just kind of flow through us. They're a signal to what's going on in our world. They do not make people die. And also remind children it is really normal when you love someone or in a relationship with them to get angry sometimes. We all get angry sometimes. We all get frustrated. If I decide that I want a cookie before dinner and my mom says, no, you need to have dinner first, of course I'm going to be mad. If I decide as an adult that I want to go on a road trip during COVID-19 and my partner says, I don't think that's a safe thing for us to be doing right now, I might get a little angry with him. It's natural. When we don't get what we want or what we think we want, we're going to feel something. And so helping children learn this is really important. And with children, as with any human being, repetition and kindness and warmth ongoing is really important. But the big thing is repetition, because they need to be reminded in many, 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 many different ways, and in many, 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 many different circumstances. I'm going to talk about self-care again. No, I don't have to. Just saying that was probably enough for you. If a child is too young to articulate thoughts and feelings, having the sense of a trusting relationship with an adult figure is important. So even like super little ones, if they know there's an adult out there that they can like play with and be open with and is just non-judgmental and is warm and kind, that can be really, really helpful. If you can't be that person because of where you're at right now, that's okay. Look around for someone who is. And if you don't have a friend or a family member that is super safe and good for that, reach out. There's lots of organizations and, well, hopefully lots of organizations and support. FCSS, of course, we have lots of support here, so please feel free to connect with us, www.fcss.ca. Okay. I think I mentioned this already, but go slow. Go really slow in working with guilt. We can't save them. We can't save them from this feeling. We can only be with them and talk with them and remind them of love and accept them for who they are. When they fall down or they're clumsy or they break something, we just continue being compassionate. When they're smelly because they don't want to take care of themselves, we just continue being compassionate and finding the blessings of who they are. When they're doing risk-taking behaviors and we're ready to rip our hair out, deep breaths, lots of self-care for you, and be compassionate and kind and remind them that they're still valuable and they're still worthy. Children will often have an unconscious need to punish themselves. Again, it's inappropriate risk-taking. They may be accident-prone, chronically depressed, and experiencing self-neglect. Be kind. And when you see these things, try to figure out what's going on under there for them. And just be open. It's that compassionate curiosity. So that was the 3 of the 12 dimensions today. We have 3 more to go, 10, 11, and 12. And next weekend is a long weekend, so I will be most likely pre-recording that one for next week. If I don't pre-record that one, I'll pre-record something interesting about grief. Last one I missed, I pre-recorded about pets. So pets are very important, and when they're lost through death or any other means, it can be really impactful. So thank you for joining me. Again, as always, I am happy to have emails. You can respond through emails. You can get my contact information at www.fcss.ca. We have counselors. I do this Monday morning every week. I really appreciate comments. And always, 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 please take care of you. Please get support for you. This is a really, really difficult time. And it's human. It's a human experience that connects all of us. Take care.